Hey, Jay Allen from My True North. Delighted to be with you again this afternoon, and today I want to talk to you about ethics. Now, you might wonder, Jay, I'm busy. I've got stuff going on. There are loads of things on my wheelhouse right now. I've got marketing, I've got sales, I've got finance, I've got customers screaming at me for X, Y and Z, I've got members of the team all over the place. I haven't got time for ethics. And the simple fact is that you haven't got time not to give consideration to running an ethical business, particularly in 2025 when the whole business stratosphere is being slowly eroded with regards to what is considered acceptable behaviour. I've witnessed, certainly in the last business lifetime, in the last 10 years of running this business, and mind the last 17, 18 years of being in business, and my lifetime of business, of being on this planet and businesses being around, I've witnessed in the last 10 years the speed in which the erosion of standards have taken over, that things that were pretty much illegal 20 years ago are now almost frowned upon. And unless we continue to address that, unless we're willing to challenge that, where is it heading in the next 5, 10, 20 years as to what will be left and who will be out there and the players on the playing field? I'm a genuine believer and an absolute ambassador for business for good is good for business. These pop-up stack 'em high, sell 'em cheaps might generate a little bit of cash on the first day or so, but even then we've seen a shift in the tide. We've only got to look at the generational impact of what's important to the next generation, looking to the future of what are influencing where the younger generation spend their time, their effort, their money, their consideration, their loyalty, to understand that even the pop-up shop, stack 'em high, sell 'em cheap, is on a hiding to nothing as we evolve. We've got to understand that ethics is the foundations on which we build. It becomes part of our culture, our why, our values. It becomes an integral part of who we are and what we stand for. And unless we are willing to be able to have something that we say, this is how we do business, then we're at mass risk of allowing the erosion of standard, that degradation of what we all hold dear to us, to continue to evolve and develop and subsequently take over, that there'll be nothing left. It'll simply be the sharks and the survivors. And I don't want to play in that field. So I've put together a 12-point checklist, the 12 points of a compass that you could use to determine as to the ethical practices within your business. Now, I'm going to be on for a while today because there's a fair amount to get through. So if you're watching this, it might be worthwhile grabbing a pen and paper just to be able to scribble these 12 principles down. Then you can decide as to where you are as a business or as a human being and whether you've got some of these in practice or not. But I can't advocate enough for you the importance of stopping for a moment and just giving consideration to what I'm going to share with you today. So if you're watching live, then please just use the hashtag live, and if you've got questions or comments, stick them in and I'll answer them whilst we're live on today. If you are catching this up later on, then simply put hashtag replay, and then if you've got any questions or concerns, or if you want to talk to me about it, stick it in the comments, and I'd love to get back to you and share some thoughts and ideas with you about why business for good is good for business. And like I say, I'm going to be on for a bit today because I've got 12 different principles to work through with you, and I want to be able to give each and every one of them the credit they deserve. The first, and I would consider the foundational, is a respect for the law. Understanding that there are legal requirements around owning and running a business, around being able to be commercial in the world of commerce, being a limited company or a sole trader, and advertising yourself as such, making people aware of the status of your business. If you are a limited company, or if you've got a company status, a CIC, a CIO, a LLP, if you've got a structure of the business, being able to demonstrate that by having your company number and your VAT number when you're VAT registered, and your terms and conditions that are accessible, your privacy policy, your GDPR policy, to have some insurances in place to ensure that you've got personal and professional indemnity insurance, if you've got staff members in place, that you've got insurance to be able to cover best practice and litigation and problems that may occur as a result of it. But ethical leadership should be enforced at a very basic level by understanding the rule of law, the country in which we are operating within, and what are the legal frameworks, and ensuring that we adhere to those. And that includes tax. I am gobsmacked by the amount of people that are happy to be able to put the 20% currently, at the time of recording this, 20% VAT on an invoice, and then when the cash comes in, treating all of it as if it's their own. Whoever taught you that charging, I mean, you don't even put it on the invoice. Think about it logically. We produce an invoice for goods or services, and there's a separate column to depict the amount we've charged, that's the VAT, that's the tax that we have collected on behalf of HMR Revenue and Customs. It's not in with the bill. It doesn't say 120 quid. It says £100, or it says £80 net, £20 VAT tax, total 100 quid. It's separate on the form. It's separate on the invoice for a reason. It's because it's not yours. We are collecting it on behalf of HMR Revenue and Customs. We are a tax collector on behalf of the government to which we operate within. And as a result of that, every quarter they ask us to be able to pay us the VAT that we've collected. And we have the privilege of deducting any VAT-able expenses that we have incurred in our business from that amount. But it's theirs. So respect for the law is about having the right company entity, it's about having the right insurances in place, to being able to collect and pay our taxes on time, to have terms and conditions to which we adhere to, and we expect and ask our customers to do so also. It's about the first principle of running an ethical business is to be a true legal entity and to operate as such. Number 2, leadership. Anything in business comes from the top down, and therefore what we do isn't just what we're being measured for, it's the standard in which we are now advocating our business operates at. The standard is the standard, as we used to say in the military. There isn't any, well, if we're busy we'll just cut corners. There isn't, if we're not busy we'll over deliver and then pull back later on. The standard doesn't vary. The standard is the standard. I often can be seen when I walk into my office stopping and looking at my desk and the chair before I sit in it. Why? Because I make a mental note to myself that as I sit in this chair, I morph from just being J. Allen, human being, to being J. Allen, Managing Director of My TrueNORTH Limited. I take on the role of the Managing Director when I sit in this chair. And not only do I take on that role as the Managing Director, but I'm setting the standard to which future Managing Directors will be expected to meet and portray. And therefore, as I sit in this chair, not only am I representing myself currently, but I'm representing everything about what this role and this rank and this responsibility maintains beyond me sitting in it. Therefore, leadership comes from never ever ever set a role or ask somebody to do something that you wouldn't be prepared or expect to have done for yourself, and then subsequently lead by example. Be the change that you wish to advocate within others, rather than barking from a desk and expecting other people to bow down and curtail to. Leadership is about being able to have a fair recruitment policy, to recruit on skills and attributes and attitudes and behaviours, rather than being racist and sexist and biased and ageist and all of that stuff that gets in the way. Leadership is about being able to provide opportunities and to be able to help and support and guide people to become better human beings, as opposed to dogmatic management that just barks and expects. So the second, for me, principle of ethics in business is all around the behaviour, both personally and professionally, of the business owner, and the setting of a standard to which others can be measured. Followed on quickly from that is the third principle. It's all around integrity. It's about being who you say you are, being true and open and honest. Integrity is about being able to be honest, trustworthy, reliable. It's about being able to be as good as a handshake. You are what you say you are. The proof the pudding is in the eating. It's about not being able to inflate or pontificate about exactly who we are and spout off about things that aren't actually true, or to exaggerate too significantly. It's about being open, honest and truthful. It's about telling it as it is. Integrity is also about living up to your word, about you are as good as the last time that you commit to doing something and seeing it through. Integrity is about being able to stand up for what you believe to be right. There's a strong belief that if you're not part of the solution, then you're automatically part of the problem. And standing back and saying, oh no, I'll let this one pass, I'm too busy, I don't want to get involved. If you see injustice, it's about standing up and stepping out and being able to live up to that purpose, not just within our own business, but as human beings, and about being able to say, I will not stand by and see another person being hard done by or mistreated or mistrusted, when that is not compliant or aligned with our values as a human being. So integrity. The next of those follows on from that is responsibility. And I believe that, one, we all have responsibility as a human being for the greater good of ourselves and humanity, and therefore we are responsible for being able to ensure that we are promoting the right values and vision and culture and practices, but also about being able to ensure that, we take responsibility for the things that are within our wheelhouse. We hold our hands up and admit when we make mistakes. We acknowledge shortcomings or failures or incorrect information. We're all human and we make mistakes. But for me, the measure of a man is about admitting that and coming forward and saying, do you know what? That was me. I did that. It was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. And now acknowledge that shouldn't have been done. It's about taking responsibility, not only for the error, but the impact the error has had and how we put it right. So taking responsibility, promoting ownership of problems and solutions is another example of how we can be able to have ethical principles within our business and to advocate that within others also. Beyond responsibility or alongside responsibility is around accountability, and not only holding ourselves to account, but being willing to hold others to account also, to call out bad practice, to recognise poor standards or where the standard isn't being met, to being able to have those difficult conversations with people who are perhaps misaligned by 1 or 2 degrees from where we ought to be. Being able to have some form of accountability to be able to ensure that we are all holding ourselves and each other to account, that the standard doesn't slip or erode. And that involves a high degree of honesty about being able to step forward and being able to speak out when we see things that are misaligned or misjudged or dishonest practice, calling out not only ourselves but our competitors, about our supply chain, about our customers, about being willing to have those open, honest and transparent conversations for the greater good of human beings. And that involves certainly a level of transparency about being willing to be able to recognise our own shortcomings, about being able to share things with other people. One of the big concerns I have right now is a distinct lack of transparency when it comes to the sales and marketing of businesses right now, and I'm seeing far too many people that are somewhat charlatans, in as much as they are stealing ideas or stealing content or stealing good ideas or practices from elsewhere and then professing it to be their own. If there's one thing that I'm a stickler for, it's I do like a good quote. I do like to be able to recite other people, but I am absolutely abhorrent, both with myself and with others that don't do it, is to recognise the source of the quote, to being able to say when Sir Henry Ford said this, or Sir Winston Churchill said this, or Confucius said the other, to recognise not only the inspirational words but about who and where they originated from. There's nothing worse than being able to read a quote and think, oh, that's brilliant, and then read the person's name and think, they didn't say that. They might be reciting that, but it's not their quote. They've pinched that from elsewhere. So a level of transparency, a level of being able to acknowledge this is the first time that we've done this. This is a beta test. And we always invite people into my TrueNORTH as beta testers. Ironically, we're doing that right now. I'm in the final stages of writing my next book, the trilogy of the Adder Zero series. I've finished writing all the manuscript, I've done all the research, it's now all laid out, and we're in the process of commissioning some beta testers, some beta readers, to be able to go through all of that content with a fine-tooth comb, people with subject matter expertise in the specific areas to which I've addressed within the book, and saying, listen, this is the research that I've done, this is my understanding, this is my knowledge. I just want you to censor check that before I put it into print, and to be able to ensure that we are absolutely validating anything and everything that we say by double checking the things that I know to be true. Well, I know them to be true, but I need somebody else now to validate that what I've seen is the actual truth, rather than my perception or belief to be true. And therefore, transparency, being open and honest and transparent with our workforce, telling people what we're doing, why we're doing it, how it contributes towards the greater good, as opposed to simply telling this is the results I want. Setting KPIs, but not necessarily determining as to how people are going to be able to help and achieve that. Transparency comes down to being able to work with our team, that we all understand what we are doing and how we contribute towards the greater good, the goal that we've all set out to achieve. Another measure of ethics, or another standard or principle that we might give considerations to, is our respect for others. I was working with a client about 18 months ago now, and their values came down to one: life happens. And I went, that 2 words were their company values: life happens. I was like, this is fascinating, I love this, tell me more about it. And he says, well, we're a people business. We are people-centric, and we understand that from time to time life happens. It happens where you're late to work one day, it happens where you're late home from work one day, it happens when you have to leave early or you arrive late. Life happens, but we're in the business of life happening, and therefore we need to be willing and open and flexible enough to be able to work with that. And he was able to be able to characterise as to how each and every aspect of the business operated on those two words, and how every member of staff, there were about 40 people in the business at the time when we were working with them, understood those two words and how that promoted them as human beings to be a better version of themselves. So having some form of respect for others, a level of behaviour, a level of environment, a level of acceptability and language that is open and acknowledging and incorporating of others, as opposed to simply this is the way it is. So a respect for others and their views and beliefs. Certainly when I was at college and university, one of the most prideful things I have from my formative education, in year 2 of my first degree in university, I was selected to be part of the debate committee, the debating society. There were 13 of us that were invited to be in the debating society. You only get elected for one term, and depending on how well you do is to whether you're then re-elected to stay on for the next term. And I was delighted to have done my full year. You're not allowed to do it for more than 1 year of university, and I was delighted to have been re-invited and did all 3 terms as part of the debating society, where I learnt to acknowledge other people's point of view. It wasn't an argument. We debated right and wrong, we debated left and right and blue and red, and we had a whole series of political and ethical and social considerations to be able to discuss. But the debating society taught me, beyond anything else I learned at university, the level of respect I needed to have for somebody else, for where they are in life, for what matters most to them, and to be willing to be able to have, or at least acknowledge, that somebody else has a different experience, has a different belief structure, has a different understanding, has a different set of values to me. And yet that doesn't mean that we can't find common ground in order to be able to work and move forward. So a respect for others, and then that again leads into compassion. I believe that a level of ethics in business can be measured by the amount of compassion we have for circumstance, for things that happen around the business, for things that are impacting or affecting people's mood or thought or consideration, understanding that we all have lives to live other than being at our desk, and a level of compassion that shows that we are in the humans to human business, as opposed to simply sit and be at your desk. A rigid format, which I think is just so old school that the quicker it becomes archaic and dinosaur and disappears off, the better for business. The next 3 are evolving even further, and the next one for me is fairness. Now, I'm going through a process at the moment where somebody is testing me. We've reached what may be considered an impasse, and I'm being significantly tested by somebody in my professional capacity right now. And I had to stipulate to them, but what you're asking me to do simply wouldn't be fair to everybody else that has done what I've asked them to do. If you're expecting me to bend or break the rules to which we agreed that we were going to pay in the first place, whilst I appreciate that, if you don't ask, you don't get, it would be discourteous, and I would consider unethical, to be willing to be able to fold and bend or break the rules just because you've asked, when everybody else is happy to adhere to them. It would be immoral of me to be able to say, well, it doesn't really matter on this occasion, because for me that means it never really mattered at all. So fairness is about being willing to being able to have that standard and to live and die by that standard. Once we've set it, that we've put the stake in the ground and said, this is who I am, this is where I am, this is why I am, that becomes the measure to which we are all responsible. So fairness is about being able to ensure that we are respectful of others and compassionate, but that we are consistent with our approach, that we have a level of behaviour, that we have a level of values, that we have a standard to which we do not deviate. Now, another of the ways in which ethics plays a part, and I think that this is a considered part right now, is around loyalty. I believe that there is a distinct lack of loyalty that is eroding business and relationships and communities beyond any other. The very fact that we are being alluded into, oh, you can get it cheaper around the corner, pays no respect whatsoever for the fact that, but I've got a good relationship with them. Here's perhaps a good example of this. During lockdown, I was going, when we were allowed to do so, I was going in my allocated time frame, or what it was, to my local supermarket to be able to buy my groceries and provisions. And I went once. I have a dairy intolerance. I don't drink milk. And I went once, and they'd run out of the milk alternative which I usually purchase. And when I'd asked them about it, I said, look, I understand that, you know, we're all going through this together. Can you just help me understand as to when it's likely to be in stock? And the employee looked at me blankly, shrugged on the shelf, and he says, well, if it's not on shelf, it's not here. And once we've got any, it'll be back on shelf. You'll just have to try again later. Knowing full well that we were all in bubbles and we weren't allowed to just nip back in and try this and the other type of stuff. And I thought, do you know what? I'll try my local corner shop to see if they might have any. And I went in, and sadly it was off the shelf there as well. It's clearly something that is used more than I'd given considerations to by many others, and it was off the shelf there also. But that person, local store owner, said, oh, can I help you with anything? I said, yes, I was hoping to be able to buy this milk alternative, but sadly you've not got any in. He says, just a minute, my brother is in cash and carry as we speak. Let me see if he can pick some up. He's on the phone, he speaks to his brother. He said, he's got some. How many did you want? And we'll put some extras in. You can come back later, he should be here in about an hour. I went, really? I says, can I have 4? He went, why don't we get you 6? We'll put your name on them. We won't even put them on the shelf. When you come in, just come to the counter, say your name, and we'll be able to produce 6 for you, and then you've got some in stock. Loyalty is about being able to go above and beyond, because I can assure you that I don't buy it from the supermarket anymore, despite it being cheaper and easier and this and the other. I go to my local store around the corner because he created a relationship with me, and I'll continue to do that for as long as he's willing to be able to stock it for me. Interestingly enough, just as a side, when I first moved to the northwest, when I moved from the northeast and relocated to the northwest, I found a local barber, somebody to be able to give me a short back and sides every 4 weeks or so. And I've used the same barber for 6 years, even though I've moved out twice. I now drive or walk or cycle or motorcycle past at least 5 or 6 or possibly even 7 other barbers, because they're dotted around all over the place around here. I now pass about 5 or 6 other barbers who are closer to home and still open, in order to go back to have my short back and sides, where I could have done anywhere, done where I first walked in and he did a good job and I was happy. Loyalty goes a long way. I probably pay in time and fuel and all that type of stuff, I probably pay 15% more for my hair to be cut by that chap than I would do if I'd been less loyal. If I'd just said, you know what, he could do it, he's round the corner, he does the same job. But for me, loyalty runs deep. It's one of our ethical standards. It's one of the things to which we adhere to, and therefore I'm showing a level of loyalty to somebody who has done a good job for me. There was no reason that he should be disadvantaged by the fact that I've moved a little bit further afield. And then finally, I know I've gone on for quite a while today, but I did warn you this was a biggie. Finally, understanding that everything that we do has both a direct and an indirect impact. What I'm talking about is understanding the environmental impact of us being in business. Now, giving considerations to, do I need to go and drive out there, or could I do it online on Zoom? Do I need to take my personal vehicle, or could I use public transport? Do I need to be able to leave the tap running in Costa for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on end, when all you need to do is to wash the pot and put it back on the side again? It drives me insane. Do I need to have that on? Do I have a policy to ensure that the lights are switched off at the end of the day? Where we operate from in our shared office block, I am appalled by the fact that all the lights are on 24/7. They're not on sensors. They don't turn on when somebody comes into the room. They don't turn off at a certain time of night. There's no light switches anywhere. They're permanently on. And there's no solar on the roof to contribute. It doesn't make any sense. So we're constantly hounding the building managers to be able to say, what are you doing about this? Because at the moment, you're having a part of an indirect impact on our carbon footprint, and that can't go unnoticed or unchecked. So today I've shared with you, it's been a lengthy one, we've been on for 30 odd minutes or so, but for me, ethics isn't just about doing what you say you'll do. Ethics goes so much deeper. Like I say, today I've shared with you the 12 principles which I believe that are fundamental to us being able to have an ethical footprint. A respect for law, we lead from the front, we've got absolute integrity, we take responsibility, we hold ourselves and others accountable, we remain honest and transparent, we are respectful of others, and compassionate in what we do and how we do it, but we maintain fairness to our standard. We are loyal to the people who are loyal to us, and we give considerations to the environment to which we operate. And for me, they are the 12 prongs, the 12 points of the ethical compass to which all and every business owner ought to be taking measure to determine as to what can we do more of in order to become a better business for good. Because trust me, being good for business, being a business for good, is good for business. I'd be delighted to know if you've sat and watched through all of that. If you've got any questions, then please feel free to stick them in the chat. But if you've caught up with this later, like I said, I did warn you at the beginning it was going to be a biggie, but I'd be fascinated to learn from you as to what have you taken from today's rant with regards to ethics in business, and where do you measure up on those 12 principles. God bless, take care. I'll get back to work and leave you to it also. See you soon.